Do you feel the weight on your shoulders? The rigidity that has settled in your jaw? The invisible tremor in your soul? There is no more common error than to imagine that we are alive when, in reality, we are merely busy. This contemplative quote is not just an observation by a sage. It is a direct diagnosis of the crisis of our age. Your mind is not just tired, it is exhausted from fighting against itself. The anxiety that consumes you, the incessant mental noise that accompanies you, even in the silence of the night, is the price you pay for your refusal to let go of the uncontrollable. The most urgent philosophical question of our modern existence is, how much of your life is spent fighting for a control that, deep down, you already know is impossible to maintain? Alan Watts, with his gentle and revolutionary voice, taught us that life is a game of hide and seek. Our mind spends an astronomical amount of energy trying to hold on to what, by nature, must flow: time, people, circumstances, and even our own thoughts and emotions. This effort is the origin of all your exhaustion. Mental health is sacrificed at this altar of control, where your vital energy is drained by the friction between your rigid desire and the fluid reality. Think of your mind as a muscle that never relaxes, that is always in tension, and you will understand why the simple act of being has become so heavy. The male dilemma is particularly cruel at this point. Man has been taught that strength is total control, absolute mastery over the environment and over himself. He has been conditioned to believe that letting go is weakness, that surrender is failure. But the rigidity of this control, the inability to bend like the bamboo, is the very source of modern mental exhaustion and anxiety. You are the general who tries to micromanage every battle, every soldier, and the result is the total collapse of the army. Your mind is screaming for relief and freedom, but your ego insists on keeping its hand clenched, grasping at sand. Imagine this tired mind as the stormy sea that never allows itself stillness. You are, at this moment, the wave that desperately fights not to break on the shore of impermanence. But peace is possible, and it begins when you decide to stop being the wave with its brief and agitated existence, and become the ocean, the vast, deep and calm consciousness that simply contains all waves, all storms, all mental health concerns. Genuine mental health is not the absence of waves, but your identification with the depth that does not move. You are exhausted not due to a lack of discipline, but due to an excess of misdirected effort. In the next few moments, we will turn the logic of anxiety upside down, using the wisdom of Alan Watts and the radical practice of Ramana Maharshi. The guiding question that must illuminate your introspection is, how can you give absolute rest to the mind, transforming the incessant pursuit of control into the simple and powerful presence of the observer? That is the key to the lightness and inner freedom that your soul craves. If this message has already resonated with your deepest truth, leave a like now. This helps spread this consciousness to others who are also exhausted. You will perceive the first sign of a free mind.
The human problem that torments us is our pathological identification with the story the mind tells. mental health is shaken because we confuse the map with the territory. You try to solve your anxiety with more thinking, but that is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Common solutions fail because they promise more control when what you truly need is less ego. You seek a technique to fix the thought, but the sage seeks a way to stop being the thinker. The battlefield of anxiety is time. You are not anxious about the present, for in the present, the only thing that exists is what is. Anxiety is a ghost of the future, a collection of images and narratives created by your mind based on memories of the past. It is the result of your illusion that if you worry enough, you will have the power to shape tomorrow. This worry is the invisible cause of your exhaustion, the desperate ego trying to prove its usefulness as the manager of the universe. But the devastating consequence is the loss of presence, the existential void that neither success nor pleasure can fill. This is where wisdom becomes the only way out. We will not offer more superficial tricks. We will dive into the source of relief and freedom. Alan Watts gives us the philosophical permission to let go, the strategic surrender. He tells us, stop trying, because the trying is the very effort that tires you. He invites us to play with life, to recognize the cosmic game. This perspective in itself is a temporary relief, a respite from the struggle. But surrender is an attitude, not a method. For the method, we look to Ramana Maharshi, the sage of Arunachala. He gives us the most direct and radical practice to restore mental health: self-inquiry. Maharshi does not ask us to control the thought or the emotion. He asks us to find the source of the I that feels anxious. Where does this concern reside? Who is it that is feeling heavy? The answer, he assures us, is not in the mind, but in the silence that precedes it. Wisdom frees us because it gives us a point of support outside the vicious cycle of thinking. If this idea makes you think differently, subscribe. This channel exists to keep the flame of consciousness alive and promote unshakable mental health.
The path to inner freedom is always illustrated by a story of surrender. There was a man named Kai whose life was the personification of rigidity and anxiety. He was the master of control, the tireless planner, but the slave of his own fear. Kai's error was the illusion that security resided in the absence of movement, in the suppression of any uncertainty. His mental health deteriorated with every new line of calculation. One day, Kai was in the center of a vast lake, rowing. He was not enjoying the scenery. He was timing his progress, assessing the wind. Suddenly, a treacherous wind picked up, turning the calm lake into a troubled sea. His first impulse was to fight, the same instinct that governed his life. He rowed furiously against the waves in a desperate attempt to keep the boat still, under the illusion that stability was the only path to survival. The more he fought, the more the boat tilted dangerously, the more water invaded the deck. Fear and panic, the physical manifestation of his anxiety, became his reality. He was drowning in his own effort, a victim of his inability to adapt. His mental health was on the verge of collapse.
His turning point did not come through force nor through calculation. It came through total exhaustion. In an act of pure, desperate surrender, he let go of the oars, not out of weakness, but out of recognition of his ego's defeat. He fell back to the bottom of the boat, closed his eyes, and accepted what would come. In that instant of total letting go, the boat stopped fighting the waves and began to float. The boat still swayed, but the swaying no longer frightened him because he had stopped trying to control it. He was no longer fighting the water, but using its energy to his advantage. Kai realized, with a temporary relief that became eternal, that his anxiety was not caused by the wind and waves, but by his resistance to them. He discovered that true strength lies in the ability to float, to not do, to let go of the identity of the fighter.
The practical heart of this video lies in the understanding that mental health is an achievement of non-resistance. The wisdom of the Eastern Masters translates into an immediate practical application, disarming the anxious thinker. Your mind is not just tired, it is overburdened by what you refuse to accept in the present moment. This refusal, this insistence that life be different from what it is the foundation of anxiety. What men feel but do not name is the silent emptiness that anxiety conceals. It is the terrible and constant feeling that you are always postponing life, waiting for the day when everything will be under control, when the risk will be zero, when the future will be guaranteed. You promise yourself rest and fulfillment only when the debt is paid, when the project is finished, when the child grows up. But that day, that finish line, never arrives, for the ego, the guardian of control, always finds a new everything to be managed, and your mental health is sacrificed at this altar of unattainable predictability. The silent conflict that assails your being is the irreconcilable difference between what is, the present fact, the imperfection, the uncertainty, and what should be, the anxious expectation, the rigid ideal, the absolute control. This division is the core of exhaustion, the constant friction that consumes your vital energy, leaving you heavy and clouded. Alan Watts, with his wisdom on flow, clarifies the legitimacy of the conflict. The pain is not the problem. The resistance to pain is the disease. Your mental exhaustion is the direct result of your continuous fight against the truth of the now, against the very mutable nature of reality. You spend more energy lamenting the past or fearing the future than living the only point of power you possess. The natural metaphor is your compass for mental health. The shadow, anxiety, fear, only exists because you insist on fleeing the light, the full acceptance of the present moment. If you turn toward the light, the shadow stays behind. If you turn toward the shadow, fear, worry, it grows until it devours you. The light is the present. The shadow is your mind running to where life is not. Your system is screaming for you to stop fighting the water. That fight is the only thing drowning you. Feel the depth of this truth. Your mental exhaustion is your system screaming for you to stop fighting the water.
The path to relief from anxiety lies in immediate disidentification.
The invisible error that keeps your mental health captive is the most fundamental of all. It is confusing the voice in your head with your identity. You do not have a mind. You are the consciousness in which the mind arises. But you have become a prisoner of the mental conversation you yourself created, a spectator forced to listen to an endless monologue of criticism, plans, and fears. And worst of all, you believe every word, granting it power. The result is a constant tingling of stress. The philosophical confrontation is necessary. The search for more information on how to cure anxiety, the productivity rituals, and the optimization routines are often just an intellectualized escape from the simplicity of observation. It is the mind using knowledge as another tool of control, another way to do in order to obtain peace. The mind only wants one more book to read, one more concept to master, to maintain the illusion that it is the solution and not the problem. The dominator that steals your mental health is your hyperactive ego, and it feeds on noise. If there is no problem to solve, if there is no crisis to manage, it loses its purpose, loses its utility. Peace requires you to retire the ego from its post as manager of the universe, to fire it from the role of trying to control the unpredictable. The ego fears silence, because in silence its voice of command disappears, and its identity, based on doing and worrying, falls apart. Your peace, your lightness, and your inner freedom are waiting for you to withdraw the power of that voice. Reflective closing. Are you seeking peace or just a more sophisticated way to worry?
Mental health is not found on the surface of thought. It resides in your depth. The transforming principle, Ramana Maharshi, is the key to dissolution. The liberation of the mind is not solving the thought, which is impossible, but dissolving the thinker, the I that feels anxious. Rest is found in self-inquiry, the most direct and powerful of contemplative practices. Faced with any thought, fear, or anxiety, the question is, to whom does this thought arise? Who am I? The inversion of logic that brings immediate relief is this. Anxiety disappears when the identity of the worried I is put into question. When you ask Maharshi's question, the mind is forced to turn back to its source. The thought loses its energy because you withdrew your belief in it. The mind, accustomed to looking outward and forward, is forced to look backward to its very origin. And in seeking the source of the thinking I, it encounters the conscious void, the full presence that cannot be thought, which is your true self. The symbol of this liberation is the void. The master's mind is the conscious void, infinitely receptive, like a clean mirror. In it, the problem cannot take root because the mirror does not cling to what it reflects. Mental health is the clean mirror. The mini epiphany is your invitation to rest. Silence is not absence, it is the full presence of the observer. It is the only place
where the mind finds rest. Alan Watts gives us the simplest and most elegant antidote to anxiety and mental exhaustion. The principle, Watts, is literal and philosophical. If you fall, fall up. Letting go is not an irresponsible abandonment. It is a survival strategy that uses the energy of the problem itself to your advantage. Letting go is the radical acceptance of the flow. Imagine yourself again in the water metaphor. When you fall into the water, the primary instinct is to fight, thrash, grasp at the surface. But it is the struggle that sinks you, that exhausts you, and that leads you to panic. Floating, the letting go and acceptance, is the minimum action that saves you. You stretch out, relax your body, and allow the density of the water to sustain you. The strength of the water, which was once your adversary, becomes your ally. Mental health is restored by the recognition that the force of nature, the flow of life, is greater than your personal will to control. The power of not doing is your key. Mental rest arises from the detachment from the need to do something with the thought. You do not need to fix the anxiety, nor the worry, nor the fear. Let it be. Observe the thought as a cloud passing in the sky. You do not need to chase it, nor fight it, nor transform it. You simply allow it. True inner freedom is the permission to exist without effort.
The man who finds peace is not the one who never feels anxiety, but the one who transforms the anxiety peak into an alignment point. The possible transformation is manifested at the moment of crisis. The peak of anxiety is life's loudest invitation for you to return home, to your presence. The everyday example, exhaustion, is your opportunity to practice mental health in real time. At the peak of anxiety, the man does not try to control the sensation. He does not say, "I shouldn't feel this." He focuses on Ramana Maharshi's simple and devastating question. The real micro-practice is Maharshi's ritual of letting go. Close your eyes. Feel the wave of anxiety in all its intensity, do not repress it, and repeat the question with genuine conviction. To whom is this sensation arising? This question is not meant to be answered by the mind. The question is your rest. It functions as a koan, a paradox that redirects mental energy from the object, the crisis, to the subject, the observer. The inner change is immediate and perceptible. You are no longer the noise and the panic. You are the lucidity that you are safe in the center of your consciousness, the unshakable point that simply observes. If this practice of stillness and letting go has resonated, subscribe to continue forging this path of mental health.
Your mental health is exhausted because your mind is always trying to live 3 times simultaneously. The regret of the past, the worry of the future, and the refusal to inhabit the present. The dilemma of man is that his mind, designed for survival, has become its own executioner. Mental health is only possible because the present is the only place where anxiety does not exist. For anxiety is, by definition, a ghost of the future. The symbol of the clock represents the prison.
Time, chronos, is the prison. The linear and measured time is the trap of the ego. The now, kairos, the qualitative and eternal time, is the liberation of mental health. Your mind cannot be anxious if it is fully engaged in the act of hearing the sound of your own breath, feeling the pressure of your feet on the ground, or looking at the light coming through the window. Anxiety needs space and time to manifest. The present steals its oxygen and brings relief. The strength of the pause is the measure of your freedom. Your ability to take a genuine pause without filling it with noise, without reaching for your phone, without planning the next step, is the true measure of your mental strength. The pause is your act of sovereignty. The awakening to true mental health is restored when you reclaim your presence from the imaginary future. The strong man is the one who decides at any moment to return to the only reality that is real, the now, the only place where the ego cannot survive.
The inner turn is your final liberation from effort. The inner before and after is clear. The tired mind was the prisoner trying to escape. The observer is the jailer who released the key. The effort to get rid of anxiety is what keeps it alive. The key is to stop trying to get rid of it and start observing it. The metaphor of stillness is your permission to be. The sky, your consciousness, makes no effort to be blue nor to get rid of the clouds. It simply is. It does not fight the storm, it contains it. Your essential being, your consciousness, is also this way. Self-mastery and serenity are your unshakable peace that has settled in your center, the core of your mental health. Freedom is not the absence of problems, it is your inability to be moved by them. The wise and poetic closing summarizes the essence of strength. Your greatest power is not incessant action, the race for productivity, but the stillness that precedes it. It is there, in that space of silence, that your mind's health manifests. The man who understands the game of hide and seek of life finds unconditional lightness and joy because he clings to nothing. The free man, according to Watts, does not deny reality, he plays with it. He understands that life is a dance, a song that cannot be stopped or controlled, only gracefully accompanied. The definitive achievement of mental health is not found when all your problems disappear, but when you stop being the problem to yourself. You stop identifying with the drama of your mind. You stop believing the voice that tells you that you are not enough, that the world is about to fall apart. This is true inner freedom. The image of rest is your new identity. Your mind does not need a vacation. It needs a change of identity. It needs to stop being the victim of its own thoughts and become the imperturbable observer. Now, for a moment, close your eyes. Feel your spine straight, firm, rooted like an ancient tree. Breathe deep, slow, firm. Exhale. Let your mind wander through the ocean of thoughts, but do not board any ship. Just observe. Feel the gentle tingling in your hands and body. This temporary relief, this clarity that arises in the space between one thought and another,
Is your nervous system responding to the self? In that space, ask, to whom does this sensation of rest arise? The silence that follows is your true self. You are here, now.
Your mind was tired because you tasked it with carrying the totality of the universe, the weight of the past and the future, the suffering of millions of imagined possibilities. Now, stop. Feel the totality of your presence. Mental health is not a luxury. It is the natural state of your being which has been covered by the dust of the ego. The unified lesson, Watts and Maharshi, is the convergence of the West and the East. The strategic surrender to the impermanence of life allows for self-inquiry by Ramana Maharshi, dissolving the anxious identity that clings to control. The path is not to conquer chaos. It is to remain quiet and whole within it, in the unshakable center of the I Am. You realize that suffering was a mistake of identity. Your mental health is restored when you assume the identity of the silent observer and stop being a prisoner of your own mind. Your true achievement is not external success. It is the clarity and unshakable strength you discovered in your center.
The final secret to your mental health is not in fighting, but in your ability to stop. Anxiety is proof that you are trying to live someone else's life, the controlling and rigid version of your ego. Let go of that weight. The mind quiets, the being speaks. Your greatest power is your ability to stop. Assume your presence and rest. Subscribe and comment relief if you feel this truth and are ready to embrace your inner freedom and your restored mental health.